With all the talk about Monster Hunter's new entry, Wilds, a certain other game comes to mind. It's not nearly as popular or even really relevant at this point, but I want to talk about God Eater, Bandai Namco's own monster hunting franchise.
This is too dangerous. Retreat and regroup.
I've made several videos concerning God Eater, but since the release of the third game in the series in 2019 and its final update in March of 2020, there hasn't been anything regarding this franchise that's worth mentioning. That's not really surprising, as it's only been about 5 years since support ended for 3, but I'm feeling a little nostalgic, and the 15th anniversary just passed, so it's up in my mind again. I hold this franchise near and dear to my heart. It's not a 10 out of 10 best of the bunch stellar high quality game series. In fact, I'd say it actually dwindles down more in the 7 to 8 out of 10 range. But regardless, I do wish that this franchise got more attention. It really has been a rocky road since 3 released, when you consider the future of the series. If we're talking actual history, God Eater 3 launched in 2018 in Japan. Its timing is rather unfortunate, given that it did release within the same year as Monster Hunter World, which was and is more popular to the point where an announcement for a new game can cause the player base to spike in the old one. God Eater has never really been able to escape the shadow of Monster Hunter. And to be fair, no one really has. Capcom is king, and they do understand their game like no one else does. I'm probably a broken record at this point, but looking at the situations and how God Eater 3 kind of got overshadowed in a lot of ways, it's a little sad. Of course, that's not the only reason for relatively low sales comparatively, but it's definitely a factor.
Old man Sakaki's gonna have a fit when he sees this.
And I've talked about this part in some respect before. The way I see it, one of the main things that went wrong with 3 is that people didn't know what it was, or that it existed at all. If you're a long-standing fan of the franchise, then you likely knew it was happening for a long time. The original teaser was released on YouTube, but Bamco pretty much didn't show this game at all at any big presentations. Even the first big trailer for the game was just a random drop on YouTube one morning. Now that works when your name is Nintendo, which they weren't even doing back then, but it doesn't work for a micro-niche franchise that barely generates any buzz officially. Leading up to God Eater 3, there was also the much more heavily anticipated Code Vein, a game being worked on by the studio that had helped make the previous 2 God Eater games, and helmed by the same director, Hiroshi Yoshimura, and we'll come back to him later as well. Code Vein wound up getting delayed to 2019, which is a blessing in disguise for God Eater, because God Eater is now no longer positioned to be released within several months of Code Vein. And then the game finally got a release date at a Japanese PlayStation tour. And while that's all well and good, a lot of these shows that happen in Japan don't really have a ton of eyes on them, and that's just because they kind of happen while the rest of the world is asleep. Anyways, my main point here is God Eater really kind of failed to reach a broader audience with 3, while other titles of similar types were reaching those broader audiences. Anyways, God Eater 3 released to decent reviews. It's not blowing anyone away, especially after Monster Hunter World really just shattered all kinds of records, but it was good enough as a game.
Perhaps. I was too stubborn. I need to be less afraid of trying new things.
And since then, Bandai has changed. A decent amount, at least. For one, the marketing of their games has always taken place in much bigger places. Notably, Tales of Arise and Scarlet Nexus were shown off at big gaming shows for their first reveal. Arise was shown at E3 2019, and Scarlet Nexus was shown at an Xbox showcase in 2020. On top of that, Code Vein also released as one of the best-selling original anime IP games from Bandai. We'll revisit this later too. Bandai had a myriad of mobile titles launched directly into a collapsing star. This is something that needs to change and hopefully has changed. The unfortunate part of that is that one of those titles was a God Eater title, and it wound up getting shut down. So, that's not good. But for better or for worse, Bandai's actual games have been doing well enough, and I think on a big part that has to do with marketing. Scarlet Nexus may have not sold enough to warrant a sequel at the time, but it being on Game Pass day one definitely helped bolster a player base. Tales of Arise also did well enough to warrant making an entirely unplanned DLC 2 years after launch. So take that how you will. God Eater felt like it was marketed specifically to the audience who already played those games. It feels like Bandai has little faith, or had little faith, in the title, and I'm not saying there's proof that they do. It just happens to fall into the slot of not being part of these attempts to get their games to be more well-known to broader audiences. Now, I've talked about this before, but the director of God Eater and Code Vein has been teasing that he's been working on something for a very long time. Which, if you know anything about the gaming industry, yes, people are always working on things you don't know about. But Yoshimura has tweeted recently that the game he's presently working on is very close to completion. On January 1st of this year, he said the development project, which has been in the works for a long time, is nearing the end. Rough translation. And this doesn't really hint at anything, but we've seen previous tweets about the project he's been working on relating to the development and voice recording last year. Point being, we are likely closer to the announcement of a game from him and his team. The bigger question, which I've also addressed a little bit, is whether this is God Eater 4, Code Vein 2, or a brand new IP. Now, all of these are entirely possible, and Yoshimura has not hinted towards a single thing about what he's working on. That said, my suspicions lie with Code Vein 2. Code Vein, as I said before, is Bandai's best-selling anime original IP in the last decade. And it definitely seems like they had ideas for a sequel with the true ending of the first game. I would love for this to be God Eater 4. That game also makes it clear that they have ideas for a sequel. But unfortunately, I'm less inclined to believe this because God Eater 3 didn't really sell that. The other option I can see happening is another team working on a remake of God Eater Resurrection and or God Eater 2. There isn't really a good reason for this. There's no backup for me to talk about why I think this would be a possibility. And it sounds kind of expensive for a franchise with very little in its name. But if Shift is still working on Code Vein, then it wouldn't be the worst idea to train a whole team to work on the God Eater franchise separately. A remake for the first game could enhance interest in the series and also fix the issues that the remastered versions have. But that's very wishful thinking. This is all me huffing copium, as they say, or whatever it is. In all honesty, I'm kind of prepared to see God Eater fade into obscurity. If we've gone 5 years without anything about the franchise, and it's very possible we go another 5 years without something. And if that happens, then I don't think this series is coming back. It'll be quite easy to say that
the dream is dead.
Genuinely, though, I really want God Eater to return in some form, be it a remake or a new title. And if you're wondering what my grand point is with this video, there isn't. I know my previous God Eater videos all kind of have a point they're trying to get across. This one might feel like a little bit of a retread with all of the stuff that I'm talking about, but I really do just miss this franchise, and even with all my excitement building for Monster Hunter Wilds, I would really, really like to see God Eater return. So let me know what you think about the God Eater franchise in the comments down below. And you can talk about what you think Yoshimura is working on, whether it's Code Vein 2 or God Eater 4. Let me know. But either way, you can like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more things God Eater, Bandai, and JRPG related. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
I got it. Wound destroyed, 10 minutes left.
This can't be good.
I've been doing... Oh.